what I'm doing. Oh, crap. Okay. Thank you guys all for being here. My name is Cheryl Simpson. I am the department chair for the Computer Technology Department. And thank you to those that are online watching us on YouTube. We've created this Meet the Experts panel for our students officially here at Great Falls College, and then realized this would be a great opportunity for anybody who might be interested in this field. Our students here at Great Falls can take classes in computer programming or networking or cybersecurity, but a lot of times in these industries, you go through 3/4 of the field before you actually get to see what the job looks like. We have you usually do an internship at that point. I thought it might be a useful opportunity for any of our students to ask questions of people who do this in the industry. There's a lot of different ways that you can go into IT as a field. So if you want to go into software, if you want to go into hardware, if you want to go into networking, if you want to go into cyber, if you want to go into management, the panelists that we have in front of you are going to show you a little bit of what their job looks like. So to get started, I'd like to have our panelists introduce themselves by telling us your name, your job title, the company you work for, and the thing that you like the most about your job. Justin, I'll let you get started. Did we turn it on?
Testing.
Nice.
I am now qualified to work in IT. All right, name, job title, company. I'm Justin Jones, not a superhero yet. Job title, I'm the vice president and I oversee IT risk management at D.A. Davidson Companies, and what I really enjoy about my job is the people I get to work with every day on my team and the other IT and cybersecurity teams.
Thanks, Justin.
My name is Ricky Cassell, and I am a network analyst with Raytheon Technologies. I think the best thing I like about my job?
What do you like about your job?
The flexibility, the hours. It affords me the opportunity to come out and do things like this, so half the time I work during the day and the other half the time I work at night, so got some time.
I'm Patrick Simpson. I'm the senior software developer for motion encoding and also co-founder of that little company. The thing I like the best about my job is problem solving. That's why I got into software. I like puzzle solving and stuff like that, and yeah, and the flexibility is nice too. So, like Ricky said.
Thanks, Patrick. Jess. Yeah.
Oh no. So my name is Devin Gray. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of a company called Brightline. We're a financial technology startup based out of San Francisco, but I've got about 14 or so employees that were hired out of Montana, and so I just moved to Great Falls, and I'm looking to get plugged into the local tech scene and help out anywhere I can. And the best part of my job, well, as the someone who's helping to grow the company, I think recruiting, meeting people, connecting them, and getting them on the path to a great career. That's probably my favorite part.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'm Dave Spicer. I'm a network admin for Benefits Health Systems. One thing I like about it is I get to play with the network equipment. I get to put a PC, a person online, get to troubleshoot it every day, and work with firewalls, stuff like that.
Thanks, Dave.
Hi, my name is Vicki Nelson. I'm the Vice President and Chief Information Officer of Benefits Health Systems. I think one of the things that I enjoy the most is just seeing the fruits of my team's labor as it applies to making caregivers, as the patients we serve, more efficient and ability to do their job and do it well, just enabling them in all things technology.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So as you can see, we have a very eclectic group here. Some in cybersecurity, kind of as a field generalized, some in software, some in networking, and some in administration. Our thought process here was to give you the idea of there's so many different ways that you can do this. One of the questions I'd love to ask my panelists, and you're welcome to go down the line to answer it, or if you really like the question, you can just jump right out and answer it. What do you think would be a few words or a word that would describe someone in your field? So when you think about what are the soft skills, what are the personality traits that are useful in a general sense? thought.
First thing that comes to mind for me in cybersecurity is healthy paranoia, as you have to have paranoia, but it has to be healthy, as you're going to be looking for a lot of bad things that are occurring during the day. If you're overly paranoid, you're going to hinder the business, you're going to hinder the mission of whatever your environment you're operating in, whether it's a hospital, financial services, military, etc. So when it comes to cybersecurity, trying to find that balance, healthy balance of paranoia, but it has to be healthy to where you're not just drowning yourself in everything that can go bad, because it will.
One of my supervisors once said that he tried to hire lazy programmers. Laziness, because they were the ones that didn't want to have to do that job a second time, so they would figure out a way to automate it. And so, and I have to agree with that. A lazy programmer is a good programmer, because they always are. They may spend 24 hours solving the problem, but it won't be having to be done again. So that's an attribute, I think, that's underrated for programmers.
Sure, I agree with both of those points. Another thing is you have to have a certain level of grit and tenacity, and so some of the best programmers are the ones who won't give up and will get through those blockers. So that's, I guess, a very important quality.
I would have to say, as a network admin, being a team player, not one person can do it by themselves. You also need to think outside the box for the unusual problems you have day to day, and also have the attention to detail, making sure a computer or an end device gets on the appropriate network, so that way we don't affect cybersecurity, anything like that with the company.
Additionally, I think someone who likes a fast-paced threshold day in, day out workload, as the industry is constantly changing, and someone who's willing to commit to kind of lifelong learning. As long as you're in the industry, it's always evolving, it's never stagnant, there's always something new to learn.
Awesome. We let Ricky come up with an answer.
I agree with what everyone said up here. I know for my job, it's learn from the folks that have been working there. Not one person knows everything, so if you can be open to learning and understanding whether the network topology or the systems and policies and things in place, you're going to be better off. So you kind of check that ego at the door, you get started, and you just become a sponge and just try to learn as much as you can.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I think those are great. And what I find so interesting is the idea that they're all in completely different aspects, but they all kind of understood that the concepts, the soft skills that you have in one field carry over to the others. So whether you're doing programming or cyber, those kind of attributes are always good to have. Before I go on to my next question, is there any questions right now from the audience? Yes, please.
The reason why I say that is because every job I've worked is very repetitive. It's fast food, frying chicken. Currently right now, I'm a dishwasher. People get killed. I love it. It's the same thing every day. I can do it now. And that's why I thought computer programming, I understand that every time something's challenging. But when it comes to computers, there's programming and all that. How much repetitiveness really is there for somebody to be able to continue to learn, continue to grow, and not hear about having to constantly relearn something new, or just having to relearn?
Before you start, just to repeat the question really quick to make sure that our audience online can hear. The question was about repetitiveness and how do you mitigate that?
Yeah, just like I said, I've worked a lot of repetitive jobs. Like right now, I'm a dishwasher. It's repetitive, same thing every day. Now, doing computer programming, how much repetitiveness is there, and how much growing can you do outside of that?
Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, it depends on who you're working for. I have worked at jobs that felt like I was in a jail, but that's not what you have to do. The stuff I do right now, for instance, I work for an advertising company. Every single day is a different problem that shows up. And so I basically get to solve. It's similar. There's similar problems that come up. Like, for instance, I'll have, you know, one week I'm integrating with one customer. The next week it's a different customer, but they have a completely different software system that they're trying to talk to. So my job is to try to figure out how to integrate between various independently created software systems. So I don't get to work with the same Google ad API, like a lot of times you might be able to do that kind of thing. But I often end up working with a customer that custom made their own API service, and then this one did this. And so I'm having to figure out, well, how can I organize those different things into the same form that we use for our internal purposes. So from that point of view, it's sort of the same thing, but it's quite different each time. And that's just one area that I work on now to make sure that I don't have to do the same thing. I make sure I have my hands in all sorts of things. So I do data analysis in one part of the company. I work with accounting in a different part. I do a little bit of UI design when they need some specialty stuff on a mobile app. So I've gotten a lot of different skill sets that I can spread around so that way I don't get stuck doing the same thing every time. But if that's something you like, you can absolutely specialize into that kind of thing.
I guess I'll give a response. So when you said you're looking for a repetitive task every day,
For the most part, I like to, keep things simple.
okay.
Then when I want to grow and move on, program by itself, how easy is it to go from repetitive to software?
Sure. So I would say that no day has been the same as a programmer, because once you fix the bug and ship it, or fix the feature and it's out there, you don't do that same task again. You're defining a different function, or you're doing a different problem. I have seen some repetitive tasks in software engineering when it comes to the testing side, where perhaps you have to go through a regression test and make sure that the software is still working. So technically that could stay the same and be very repetitive and enjoyable, but that's kind of shifted from a manual process to be automated testing. So that, again, turns back into code that you then write once. And so I would say it's not repetitive at all. So, nope, he doesn't want to.
Yeah, it's all programming. That was a programming question for us.
Well, actually, I'd like to ask the same question of my cyber guys. Is there anything in your job that is repetitive, or is every day different?
Well, I can speak from the government standpoint. Since being a defense contractor, our processes are very, there's not a whole lot of leeway. We tend to have to do the same things over and over and over again because it needs to be repeatable, it needs to be audited. You can't really change your processes, so it's very streamlined and it's very focused. Now, as far as, being able to step outside that's really a mindset thing. How much do you want to learn? I mean, this industry is huge. I mean, obviously you have programmers, you have folks that work in the healthcare industry, financial industry, and government. So I say it'll take you as far as you want to go. Find something that you like, and I say go for it. So.
Thanks, guys.
I'd say ditto. But very similar on our side. We're following stringent processes, heavily regulated industry, and in many of the tasks, for instance, in our SOC, we're analyzing phishing emails all day, that sort of thing. They could be different phishing emails, but the same approach or methodology or critical thinking skills are going to apply to it. Now, there are certain things we'll do, as I always challenge my team, how can we improve the process? Like you heard from the programming, how can we automate, how can we put orchestration type tools into place to get out of some of the manual repetitive steps that we might have done in the past that we don't need to do. Machines are fantastic at saying 1 or 0. What we really need humans for is to find the gray space between where a 1 or a 0 determination can't be made. And that's where I think you find, for me, the magic within the field and where the growth can come from, both from process improvement, but really in personal improvement, I think what Ricky was kind of saying as well.
Thank you, guys. Does that help to answer your question? Oh, yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Before I go on, were there any other questions from the audience? Okay. Hang on, Elliot. There you go, sweetie.
So this is more for the cybersecurity guys up there. What does a normal day for you guys actually look like? We know programmers, sometimes they wake up in their office and roll out of bed. And I've had David the teacher, I know what his day looks like. So as a cybersecurity professional, like what does your job actually entail when you walk into the office? What do you do every day?
It's kind of a loaded question.
Personally, what do we do, or what do our teams do?
Can I have a little bit of both?
A little bit of both.
Because obviously coming right out of college, we won't do what you guys are doing, so.
Right, at my level, I'm managing people all day, so I have several teams that report to me in IT risk management. So I have a team that focuses on third-party risk management. So when we're dealing with, say, a third party who's processing sensitive data on behalf of our company, our customers, we have to analyze the risks. We have to ensure our legal team analyzes contracts, so on and so forth. So I have a team who does that, analyzes the risks, ensure we have proper controls in place to mitigate those. We also have a SOC team. They do various things through their shift. For us, it starts at 6 a.m. and runs till 5, and we also pay a 24/7, so we have continuous coverage. So when they're rolling out of bed in the morning, 6 a.m., seeing what alerts occurred overnight, and then they're having handoffs throughout the day as their shift goes through. I also have an identity management function on my team that we do various things in trying to push new technologies forward. We also have governance as part of that process, so auditing access rights to various systems. Who are the privileged users? What functions can they do? So in my day, it's wake up, check the phone, see if anything has blown up at 5:30, and see if I need to get on my computer right away or if I can go to work out first. And then when I come in, get a little bit done before 8, and then we just see where the day takes us. Like I think a lot of these guys mentioned, every day is different. When major vulnerabilities come out, it's not a hectic day. It's a hectic week or months after that usually to get all the controls in place and to ensure that you're doing what you need to do to push the business forward and keep the bad guys out.
So from my standpoint, I'm the guy on the keyboard. So I'm working those 12-hour shifts. So I'll come in the morning, grab my checklist, and start my day. I do a lot of monitoring. We are obviously reactionary. We're constantly making sure that we can connect where we need to connect, implement measures and upgrades. I mean, in the industry, you're always upgrading. Something is always coming out, that next piece coming right behind. And you're constantly 90 to 120 days behind the ball. So, once a vulnerability comes out, once it gets vetted and everything like that, I mean, you're constantly playing catch up. But for me, I'll do a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then I'll go from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. The following month, and I do that for a month on and a month off. So just keep flipping back and forth, and so it's every day. Sometimes it can be a blur, especially when you're on nights. You come out, and especially in the wintertime here in Montana, you're like, hey, is that the sun? I haven't seen that thing in 3 weeks. So it can be a bit tedious, but overall completely worth it as far as the NOC/SOC environment. So.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Actually, I'd love to hear the rest of the panelists' answers on this, because that was from a cyber point of view. Obviously, a programmer is going to look a little different, network analyst and admin. So, Patrick.
When I first started programming, it was 12 to 14-hour days, sometimes longer. I remember disappearing for 2 or 3 days at a time, and my spouse was not happy with that, especially when we had a newborn. But that was the kind of work I did because I worked in startups, and so it was extremely heavy loads. Then once I built up a skill set that became more and more unique, then I could start focusing on what I wanted to do. And so I started picking and choosing my stuff. And plus, I also ended up going into my own business, so I did independent contracting. So I wasn't no longer working for a company directly. I worked for myself and then put out my time. And that facilitates a lot of flexibility. So you can tailor that so that if you do want to be able to, now mind you, when I roll out of bed, it's usually because I just went into bed at about 5 in the morning, and so then I roll out at 7 and then go, okay, let me check real quick, is there anything wrong with any of the projects I'm working on? Very similar to how you guys have to do things. The first thing I do is check to make sure nobody's screaming. And if nobody's screaming, it's like, okay, good, I can get breakfast or whatever. Look at the news, and then you just get your stuff done. But that flexibility that this industry provides once you get your skill set is pretty amazing. And you can pick and choose your jobs, which is really nice. And that goes back to that learning thing. If you keep on learning, in programming I say that's the most important thing. You keep on learning new tools, new technologies, you can write your own ticket.
Yeah, great. So, you know, early in my career, as an intern working at Right Now Technologies, which then got acquired by Oracle, you know, that was following the old school waterfall methodology. So there was a lot of tickets already written up, and we used our own system called Incidents, but there was already tons of stuff to do. So in the morning, you'd log in, cherry pick the easy ones maybe, or grab the ones you already had assigned from the previous day and try to knock them out. And then it was kind of a personal goal to try to knock out as many as you could. Now, with agile methodology, you know, there's these rituals that you'll do in the morning. You'll do a stand-up, so go around the room. What'd you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? Any blockers? But it's really the same. You'll grab a unit of work, a feature, a bug fix or something, and try to stay heads down. Try to stay out of meetings if you can. And then, yeah, ship code to production. That's the whole goal. Right?
Thanks, Devin.
As a network admin, my day starts usually about 6 a.m. I get to the office, I check to make sure we don't have any outages on our remote sites. Try to get those restored before anyone else gets to the office. Usually it doesn't happen, but it can happen. If I'm not doing that, I don't have any tickets. I'm prepping for switch replacement, iOS upgrades on the network, just stuff getting prepped for a week or so down the road. So my area, it takes a lot of effort to coordinate maintenance.
My answer, obviously, as administrator would be entirely different from a day-to-day look and feel. A lot of my duties revolve around strategy, planning, managing budget, onboarding, offboarding personnel, making sure that fires are handled and communicated out. We're addressing customers' requests and needs. We have structure in place to take input in terms of requests of new things people want, and a way to measure and prioritize if we're going to proceed with something, making sure everything we have committed to from a project point of view is being delivered or is on track to be delivered. Maintain excellent customer service, and I'm often the set of ears that hears when things aren't going well. Of course, I'd like it much more if it's the opposite, but just making sure everyone in my team is in lockstep and that we're moving the collective ball forward.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for those answers. Do you still have a question? Okay. There you go.
Okay, so obviously technology's everywhere and companies everywhere use it, and they're people like you with like highly developed skill sets are sought after. But what would your advice be to someone who kind of wants to get their feet wet in the industry, maybe outside of school, in a place like Montana? Like, what kinds of places would you look for that? Because I do a job every day where I have to learn a lot, and I would rather be learning something that I'm actually going to use for the rest of my life than something that I'm just going to dump as soon as I get my degree. So that's my question. Just how would you advise someone to get their feet wet? And I'm more focused on like programming, but also I'm interested in, you know, other aspects like sysadmin and stuff like that, because I don't exactly know what I want to do. But for programming specifically, would it be better just to, you know, work on your own and just try to write code as much as possible, or would it be better to seek out somewhere to try to, you know, teach you?
Yeah, number one, write as much code as you can by yourself. I mean, in my day-to-day life, I play a lot of games, but actually, as my wife likes to say, when you're implementing a fourth VM, that's playing a game, and that's what I actually do, those kinds of ridiculous things. So I write stupid things just to prove that I can write it. I answer the Euler problems all the time, so I'm constantly writing software. The reason you do that is because it develops your skill sets, and it makes you faster, a better programmer, and interestingly enough, if you have that and you've been doing that and you can point to it in an interview, people will be really surprised, because most of the time when you have people interviewing, like when I'm doing interviews with people, I'm interviewing them to work with me, they don't really often tell me anything that they're doing. So if they were to actually say, yeah, I solved all these Euler problems, and by the way, problem 36 was really hard, and this is what I had to do that, that's the person that's going to be on the top of my list when I'm narrowing things down. Because one, they have an enthusiasm, because they're actually trying to solve that problem. And two, they actually did something outside that they were required to do. So that's an important thing to me. Every junior engineer that I've worked with that has come to me asking about their own programming problems that they've been practicing on, I strongly encourage that. So it's something you should absolutely do yourself. Now, as far as getting paid to do it, there are a few things you can try. It's a little harder, but you can try to do some, piecework through some of the tools that are now available where you can bid on work. Don't expect to make very much money, but it's a way of getting yourself, it's sort of like the Euler problems, but you might actually get a little bit of cash from doing it. And then the big problem, it's not as big a problem in Bozeman because there's a few more software companies sitting around so that they're available a little easier. But getting internships is a little bit more difficult, like in Great Falls, just because. Yeah. But things have changed. The COVID thing really threw a wrench in everybody's thing now. The company I work for instance, the main contract that I have right now is in Burlington, Wisconsin. Prior to COVID, they required every single engineer, except for myself, and that was because it was a special case, to work in Burlington, Wisconsin. They don't even require their account executives, who are salespeople now, to work in Burlington, because they can't get anybody to move, because nobody wants to do this anymore. So things have really changed. So you'll be surprised now at what you can get an internship doing. It just may be you're working for a company in New York, but you're not moving. And that can be a really good thing. So there is stuff available. One thing you can definitely do is, and I would recommend this, having some kind of even rudimentary formal education, like getting an AA here, for instance. That alone, you can put your resume out there in a headhunter, and they will help place you someplace. And if you're willing to do contract work, that can really be that step, because that allows them to try you out without the overhead of HR. Because HR overhead is a real big problem, because if they hire you, they have to fire you if you didn't work out. And that can be, that can cause some extra costs. So if you're willing to do contract work and it doesn't bother you, say your situation is such that you can afford not to have a job for a couple of months because of whatever, then you can be a little bit more flexible. And then that way you can get that skill set. And once you have it, then you can do that. That's basically how I did it. I did a bunch of contract work, got myself established with a skill set, and then now I've been able to expand from that.
Yeah, I'd agree. So before moving to Great Falls, I was in Bozeman for about 22 years, went to career fairs all the time. I get asked that question every year, and I answer with, you gotta find something that you really love to do. So, and then build a little piece of software to help solve that problem. Or find a little thing that you can automate and script it. But really find like an application that you wanna build, and try to build it, try to deploy it, because then you'll be forced to learn how do I deploy a thing, and how do I build, so that will help direct your learning and keep it fun. Like if you like golf, for example, I love it. I built a golf website, handicap system, and I just had a passion about it, and that helped land me a job because someone saw, oh, you're the CEO of this company? Well, it was just a tiny website, but it starts the conversation, and they can see that enthusiasm that you have in the project, and honestly, then you get to try out all sorts of new technology. You definitely need a computer and an internet connection, but there's nothing stopping you from getting started like immediately. Like,
Well, and I'd like to go ahead and interrupt because obviously I'm the department chair of the computer technology department here at Great Falls, so I have to plug my program. One of the great things about Great Falls College is that here we have our programming degree is almost entirely what we call high flex. So high flex, for those of you that don't know, the concept being that I would teach a class in a classroom from 1 until 3 p.m., Monday through Thursday, whatever the timing was. That entire class is WebExed, so for students who want to be in class, they can, and for students who want to remote in because they can't make it in person, they can remote in, and the whole thing is recorded. So if you can't attend between 1 and 3, you can watch it in the evening when you can, and it works on that flexibility option for the student of meeting them where they are. We have a lot of students that can do that. They can take a course where they never set foot in my classroom, but they can still take my courses. So that's something that we offer here in our programming. Our cybersecurity degree is almost entirely online. So our networking degree, because there's so much hands-on, is really kind of more required to be in person. But we try to find a way, especially with COVID, of meeting you where you are and finding a way to make your program work with you. So that was my little spiel. So any other questions for our panelists at this point? Oh, yeah.
E-U-L-E-R. Oil, it's actually Euler. I should have said Euler.
For those who pronounce it, yes.
Yeah, and if you don't hear a mathematician say his name, then you'll pronounce it Euler or Euler or whatever.
I just wanted to piggyback one more thing. You're doing exactly what you're doing right now. You're asking, you're meeting people. So everyone up here, everyone that works within it, build your network. A lot of times, because the process can be it can be convoluted, and it can be tough to find that one that works for you. But utilize your resources, build your network. Whether you want to work in the financial sector, the healthcare sector, the programming sector, you want to work by yourself or you want to work with a team, just build your network as big as you can and then find what works best for you and then just track it down. So that's my piece.
Yeah. You would be surprised how many people call you on LinkedIn because they're a friend of a friend who needed someone with your skill set. So that becomes the networking place that a lot of people will go to. But just, again, meet people, get to know people, and then they find out that you're around, and they tell their friends. So, all right, any other questions before I go on? Awesome. So for my panelists, I'd love for you to think back. Most of you are probably a little higher up in your career than you were maybe in your early 20s. So if you can remember back to when you first started your career, what advice would you have given yourself? So knowing the pitfalls that you made and the decisions you made, is there anything you can think of as terms of, oh golly, if only I had known this then, it would have made my life a little less stressful, miserable, cranky, tired? Justin, you can pass if you're not ready, if you want to think about it. It is a tough one.
It's not anything that I would have told myself not to have done. I think it turned out I was lucky enough. Learn. That's the number one thing. I saw other programmers that I worked with that I really respected who got stuck. So they would do one thing, they would know one technology, and that's what they became comfortable with, and they stayed with that. And they did that until they got burned out. And then they stopped doing programming because they didn't want to do it anymore. Whereas I was fortunate enough to have this interest in learning something new every day. Mind you, I spent a lot of time doing that. I would say I probably spend 1 to 2 hours a day reading ridiculous technology papers And I watch stuff on YouTube that are programming things like somebody talking about in some new technology. And even if I don't even think it's a very interesting thing, I'll tend to watch these things because I want to see what other people are talking about. And so I would recommend you've got to do that as a young programmer. You've got to do that. Because if you do, then it helps you keep interest in the program or your career, and you'll keep on going. And it opens up possibilities. I mean, I've worked in a dozen different industries. I've worked in medical devices. I've done actually hardware engineering. I actually wrote FPGA VHDL, which is a really weird thing because you're actually programming hardware. I never would have done that if I wouldn't have been fooling around and reading, these papers. So doing that kind of stuff has allowed me to do a lot of interesting things in my career.
I would just say it's important to realize as you're setting down on a path and down a road, just be open to the evolution of wherever it takes you. You may have a fear of having to have everything planned out to a T and your life's plan organized and thought out and decided upon, and be open to what that evolution takes you. As long as you start the process and gain those educational skills and knowledge, doors will open naturally. You'll find your aptitude, whether sometimes figuring out what you don't like is equally as beneficial as finding out what you do. So it's a process that it never ends. I mean, when I think back about my career and where I started, where I intended to be and where I am, it's entirely different, and that's okay. You could still find success and reward. Just start and be open.
I got to figure it out now. If I was to go back and give myself advice, I would say, what is it you truly want to be? And then ask yourself, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? What I found over the years, and agree with all this other advice, is I spend several hours a day reading. My path of where I wanted to go has not been straight, even slightly. But it's understanding what your strengths and your weaknesses are and who you ultimately want to become in your career 5, 10 years down the road is always helpful. But always kind of keep focused what you want in the immediate future. So one thing I do with my team that I wish I would have started a long time ago was 5-3 one-year plans. So I want them to look out, where do you want to be in 5 years? Pick some scary goals, where do you want to be? Then come back and say, okay, to get to my 5-year plan, where do I need to be in 3 years? Then great. What are you going to do this year to get yourself to that 3-year goal? And working on that, understanding truly what your weaknesses are. One of mine is public speaking. I'm up here working on it right now. Wouldn't have been up here a few years ago. So understand what your strengths and weaknesses are, what you want to become. Keep persevering and have grit and keep working towards it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Any questions from the audience at this point? Great. Is there something about your job that really surprised you, that you didn't expect going into it? So you sat in job fairs, you talked to people, you thought this is what your job was going to look like, and then you got into it and you realized, yeah, this is so not what I thought it was going to be. Is there any aspect of your job that you think might have been underplayed a little bit or overplayed? It was going to be ethical hacking all the time? Yeah.
When I started, it was 1996. So it was the whole dot-com boom. So I thought I was going to be a millionaire by the time I was about 2 years out of college. That did not happen. I worked at a lot of startups. And so, yeah, that would be the thing I would say it was most at my particular point in time, because of the way things were going. Everybody was like, every time you turned around, somebody was throwing money at these ridiculous ideas at the time. And I worked at probably, I think it was 6 startups in a year and a half. And that's how fast they would collapse, because I wasn't quitting. It was like you would work someplace and then you would switch. So that was a particularly, of course, it's a unique time in our industry's development. Probably not happening again, but in the same way. We have had some little things like that, but nothing like it was in the late 90s. But yeah, that was a different thing. So keep some kind of realistic expectations about where you think you're going to happen with your career, because otherwise you'll be like sucked into the trap of killing yourself at startups over and over again. Yeah, it's not the movies.
So when I started my IT career about 8 years ago, I thought I was going to be a network admin sitting at a desk at my house. I was totally wrong there. My job is 95 to almost 100% hands-on. I'm all over the hospital doing things. I thought I was just going to be just a straight network admin. I didn't want just that. I wanted to be a bigger, better player. So I started branching into the wireless. I do a little bit of VoIP, starting to get into the WAN side of things. I just kept improving on myself. I did not want to be stagnant in one small section at a time.
I guess maybe I would say, as people generally venture into career, your idea is to go in and become an expert of that topic. And what I've quickly realized in landing myself where I am today is I am anything but the expert on the topic, but I surround myself with those that are the experts. And so being able to build trust and relationships and relying on others to actually be the expert and letting that be okay, that I'm not the expert in all things IT.
Thanks, Vicki.
I'll add. So, you know, I started writing code probably 4th, 5th grade, and I always thought, oh, I'm going to be writing code all the time. The one thing that I've noticed now that takes you the furthest is your communication skills. Like, software engineering is a people problem. You know, like, which thing do you work on first? What's the most important? Who gets to work on what? There's a lot of human interaction there, and so your communication skills are really important.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. Being able to communicate with people is a real bonus, because if you do that, then you it's a lubricant. It helps smooth over a lot of problems, especially when you're running into a technical problem that you're running into. Because if you had a good relationship with the client or the customer, and I always call the person that I'm doing the software for the customer, because that's, you're building something for them. You know, whoever, if they're internal, the person next door to you, whatever, they're the customer, because the customer is mostly right. They don't know what they want, but they're right. And that's another thing too, when you're developing software, keep that in mind, that if you're doing a project like that, you've got to be able to talk to them and talk through with them, because they're going to say, hey, we need to get this done. And then if you don't communicate, like Devin's saying, and you don't have those skills, you're not going to realize that there's other parts that they haven't told you yet, because they don't even think about it until, you know, you developed a project and then you realize, oh, we've left out pieces because we didn't sit there and talk to them. So yeah, communication's huge, and you really need to develop those skills.
I'm going to keep piling on the communication. I think, does everyone know what the job of a resume is? It's to get an interview. The job of the interview is to sell yourself so you get the job. If you want to move up, you want to sell your ideas to your teammates, to your business partners, your customers, you have to be able to communicate, and if you can't, you're going to have a very tough time.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. That's great. Actually, I'm going to take that and lead that into a question that I originally intended for Vicki, but honestly, anybody could answer it, of how can you tell when an applicant is a good fit for your company? So, Vicki, do you want to start with that one? And like, what are the things you're looking at from an applicant's point of view once they do their resume for Justin and get the interview? What could they say to sell themselves to you? What are the attributes you're looking for?
Yeah, beyond the plain Jane stuff that you're looking on a resume to vet out whether someone's interview worthy, like the education and the background and the experience. I think really just someone who can present themselves, who can articulate well, someone who shows passion and enthusiasm and a willingness to learn. Generally, that's kind of a global indicators no matter what industry you're in. Someone who can actually show some self-reflection about where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, what their confess up to mistakes that they have made in life, whether that's in a previous or current role, just general honesty, integrity, the normal things.
Thank you.
I got one. Sorry to steal it. So yeah, I've done tons and tons and tons of interviews, and yeah, definitely you have to. It's good to have a pedigree, a good degree, perhaps, good experience. But one thing, you know, soft skills are really important. You'll have to go through like a culture fit type interview, perhaps. And during those, I can't remember who called it this, but it's like the airport terminal test. If you were perhaps working with this individual and you had to go on a conference and you guys were stuck in a layover for many hours, would that be a fun experience to be near this person? Or would that not be a fun experience? And I use that as a litmus test. And really comes down to being a genuine good person. Is that someone you want to spend a lot of time with? Because, you know, we all have families. You spend a lot of time with these individuals at work, and so it's got to be time that is quality time. And hopefully everyone, you know, has a good heart. And you can see that sometimes in the interview face-to-face. Character is very important.
I would agree the terminal test is actually a great one. At the same time, what I look for with the interviewees is I often ask them, what was the biggest problem you had? And I don't care if you solved it, I just want to know how you approach that problem. And so that's one of the things, because for me personally, it's because we're problem solving. That's the biggest thing that software is about, is solving problems that are coming up and we don't know what they're going to be. And I wanted to see how this person was able to communicate a failure, and because that happens all the time. And were they willing to talk about it? Because if they're not, that tends to be a red flag, because we all have these problems. And it also tells me that they may not have been actually doing anything. So that's why I like to hear that kind of stuff. But other than that, no, it's you know, the personality fit and of course the honesty and stuff like that is a you know, obvious thing. But yeah, I like to hear people when they screw up because that actually tells me a lot, because I know I do it all the time. So that's an important thing.
Continue a similar thread here. After I've gotten past the technical aptitude portion, two things I really focus on. Are they a team fit? And are they here to continually learn? I have yet to meet a person come in that's saying, I want to stay in this role for the next 30 years. Hasn't happened yet. They all want to learn, and as I think we all know, technology changes like that. You have to learn just to stay at your current position if you wanted that for 30 years. So learning is important, but the team fit to me is even more important. On my interviews, my entire team sits in and interviews candidates before they get through the end, and they all have an input in the process. My reason for this is I have hired someone who is really great technically, but they have run over people on my team and other teams. They have to be a team player. They have to be a good fit for your organization, as this individual could have been a perfect fit in another organization, but he wasn't for mine. So trying to find someone who's got a good cultural fit is going to provide a great customer experience and do what they need to and continue to learn. And another thing I always tell my team, if you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing hard enough. If you're going to make a big mistake, you come to me first. We'll handle it.
Awesome. Any other questions from the audience? Great. I have a few more over here. So first, for cybersecurity, so in theory for Ricky and Justin, how do you handle the emotional pressure of if I fail at something, the world falls apart and really bad things happen? Does that become a thing?
Not really. There are a lot of safeguards in place that minimize the impact of, say you messed up. There's a lot of things in place to make sure that that's minimized. Oftentimes we see it takes another analyst to second that. So if we're making changes or something to the network, we have some built-in safeguards that ensure that if I did input the wrong command or config change, that it won't interrupt the whole system. And now it has happened. We have seen things go down, and you see a little bit of sweat. You get some perspiration, and you get nervous, and you look over at your other guy and go, yeah, I'm not really sure what happened. If you're not feeling that pressure, I don't know if you're in the right biz. You should feel a little bit. You want to make sure you don't do that again. But in my industry, there's a lot of safeguards in there to just minimize that. So.
Yeah, likewise, we have control structures in place to minimize big risks from occurring. The minor ones are going to happen. They're coachable. You get through them, and they're learning experiences, or you hope they're learning experiences so they don't occur again. If they do, then you have an issue. But again, to me, it's putting my employees in positions where they're continuing to move forward in their careers. They're taking good risk-based decisions to move the business forward, but they're acknowledging, yep, I made a mistake here, and I get most proud of my team when they admit a mistake and they share it with the team so no one else on the team makes it again.
You got to own that. If you mess up, just own it.
Yeah, in fact, I've deleted the entire corporate database before. And what it was, fortunately, we had backups regularly every 15 minutes. So it wasn't a big deal. It did shut down everything for 3 hours because we had to restore. But the funny thing is, like you said, it was like I was doing this and I knew I shouldn't have been doing it in the server, and I was trying to be fast because they needed to get something done, and I ended up deleting 15 tables out of the database. And then I went, oh crap, that was on the wrong, because I was sharing, you say, I should have had 2 instances of the app up rather than 1. With a single connection in Studio. And so I was trying to update them, and then I was going, hey, why is the key there? Oh, well, I'll just drop the table. And I did that 15 times before realizing I was in the wrong database. And so I went, okay, and I sent out an email and said, okay, we got to restore the database. Kathy, you're on. Can you bring up that backup? And she's like, oh yeah, no problem. But the key was, you immediately put it out there, said, okay, this is going to happen. You recognize the problem right away, but the reason it wasn't so and it wasn't a panic. It was, oh my God, I can't believe I did this and I screwed this up for 3 hours. But I immediately sent out an email to the executive team, said, okay, this is going to take down for 3 hours. We'll be backed up on some customer orders, but they won't notice because this stuff happens anyway. And we were able to solve that problem quickly. But it was about communicating it, and then writing up exactly what I had done and told everybody, don't do this again, bad idea. And it was one of those things. So, and that was I think that was like 2 months ago I did that. And that was a really stupid thing. But it was one of those things I was like, oh, I can do this real quick.
Yeah, 2 quick things to add. You mentioned it, whenever we have a big major material outage, having your root cause analysis is vitally important for your customers to ensure, again, it doesn't happen again. But when it does hit the fan, keeping yourself, your team, and those around you calm, cool, and collected. If people are running around, your decision process and all those around you isn't going to be good. You need to have a calm, cool, collected, work through your processes. If you have controls in place, backups, for instance, and a process to recover them, you're going to be fine.
One of the reasons why we had 15-minute backups is because we'd had ransomware attacks twice in a row. Interestingly, the first time it was executive team had let it in, and the second time after all the training, it was the executive team that let it in. So, but because of that happening, we decided to do 15-minute backups. And so because of that, when I screwed up, it was like, I was like, oh, okay. It's not the end of the world, and we can reprocess that data real quick. So it's like, okay. But if it would have been the 6 years before, that would have been a little bit more of a problem because we were only doing backups, I think, every day. And that would have been a bad day. So that's another thing. But it is also having, like you said, these recovery things. If you do the recovery things, then a lot of crises, you know, like if you have a plan for how do I handle business recovery, and you teach your team about it, so they know if something happens, don't worry, we have a plan for recovering the business, then one, you can communicate that to the executive team because they'll probably forget you had it. And when you send that email out, they're going to panic too. And you say, no, we got the recovery plan. Here it is. Here's the process we'll go through. It's going to take us this much time to restore. And if you have that plan, then you don't have that stress level. And like you said, you communicate that with your team. If you keep your team calm, everybody else calms down. And then it's just like, oh, we'll just be out for a day.
Awesome.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I'd add is I always try to make sure when we're building something, practice ego-less programming. So don't attach yourself to the module. So if there's a bug in the module, it's not a bug in yourself. Or if you're critiquing in a code review, you're not critiquing the individual. Like, there's not something wrong with that person. There's something wrong with the code, and we will solve the problem. So if you always kind of use that mantra when you're tackling a crisis, what are we going to do? Even though maybe it's obvious that someone did it, there was something that we didn't have in our process and controls that allowed this to happen. And so always framing it like a group problem is better, because then as a team, we will solve it. So that's what I'd add.
As on the network side, when you're doing config changes, you definitely got to pay attention to where you're at. Make sure you enter the correct commands. Personally, a couple of years ago, I was doing some changes on a trunk line and trying to do multitasking and all that. I input the wrong command, and I took half the ER down for about 2 minutes. I kept it calm, kept it cool. I restored connection. Everything was up, back and running. But you got to be careful what you do and admit you made a mistake.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Questions? Everyone doing okay? Great. So this is kind of my wrap-up last question for the group as a whole. Is there an aspect of your job that is perhaps less enjoyable than the others? We have a tendency in programming or in cybersecurity or in some of our degrees. In recruiting, we tell you all the really cool, fun things. All the job fairs are like, this is the coolest thing ever. Oh wait, you only get to do this like once every 3 months. The rest of your job looks completely different. So I'd like to give my students and anybody potentially interested in this field, what are the parts about your job that are just not as much fun?
It's the most important thing that you can do as a programmer, and it's the one that we all hate, and it's documentation. There is no doubt about it. Documentation is the worst thing you do, but it's the most important you do. Because invariably, you have to read your own code, and you have to come back to it. And if you didn't do it right in the first place, you'll be a nightmare. So it's actually the worst in both ways, because if you didn't do it, you're going to hate yourself. And if you're doing it, you're really regretting it. It's my biggest problem I have, is trying to make sure I'm documenting things properly. And it's not exactly thrilling. And I don't know of anybody that I've ever worked with that said that documenting was their favorite thing. So.
I'll piggyback, documentation, cable management. Everyone says, I'll come back and get it. There is no coming back and getting it because you're so busy. You got to keep up with it, maintain it, document it. The other thing is be flexible with your hours. There's times I'm at work at 1 a.m. and I just came off of a shift a few hours prior. It all depends on what your maintenance is. So you got to be flexible in documentation.
I'll just go in a little bit different direction. I say it starts at home. Make sure that your spouse and your family, whoever it is, that you have their support. The industry can be very time-consuming, and when you're at home, you're still at work sometimes. My job, if I have to work on Christmas, I have to work on Christmas. I have to work holidays or birthdays and things like that. If I can get the time off, fantastic. If it's my shift, I got to be there. So if things aren't good at home and you're not communicating that, sometimes it can be very, very stressful. So you got to make sure things are good on that front.
Yeah, if you think you're getting into a 9-to-5 job, you might want to think again. Another function I cover is business continuity and disaster recovery, and I don't think I slept for about 3 weeks in the middle of March. Luckily, we were able to get 1,500 employees set up remotely and working in 3 days. But what we didn't tell them is we started tracking this thing in December. So before it even started coming out of our president's mouth, we were tracking it as someone on our security team was receiving feeds from China and something was starting to trend up there. So we put a lot of our plans in place. I started as a technical writer. I love documenting.
Wait, that's true. The technical writers all like documenting. It's weird. That's weird.
I love it. I like documenting. My team probably hates me for it, but I think we got great documentation. But it's the great documentation that led to that recovery. And while those hours are stressful, it's very, very rewarding. And like Ricky said, if you're working a 20-hour day per se and you need to go home for 4 hours, go home for 4 hours. Don't keep it in your mind. You're going to burn yourself out very quickly.
You know, mentioning that disaster recovery thing, the same thing happened at our company when I was noticing the same things, and I brought it up with our IT department. I said, I think we better be prepared for shutting things down. And fortunately, we had moved everything into the cloud a little bit prior to that, and so we had a lot of recovery things. So I was like, okay, so what do we need to do? Who's still working in person? And so I found those things, and I worked with our IT team to try to set that up. So like you were saying, you was like, oh, we should think about that. So, and that's the interesting thing about this job, though, is that I'm a software engineer. Normally, I don't do any of this stuff. But because I was interested, I brought it up, and well, I got tasked with it. But it was a neat thing because then when we were ready, it was like, oh, cool, we get to use the thing we set up. So, and then you solve the problem. And I think that's really the interesting thing about this industry is that we're problem solving, business problems that, something comes up and you can keep a business running. No matter what happens. It's pretty amazing when you think about what all of these companies were able to do over COVID. I mean, they never thought they could do it.
So the original question, since we got a little bit off topic on COVID, as much as I love it. I love COVID. I love you guys getting off topic. That actually makes me happy. Is there something about your job that you find a little less enjoyable than the other parts of your job? So for those that haven't gotten a chance to speak yet. Vicki?
I think for me, it's a test of patience because the career field, I'm a list checker and I'm a taskmaster and I want it done. And depending on the size of the organization and the complexity of the environment, not all results are quick, and sometimes forward motion and progress feels slower than I would like it to occur. That's about it.
Well, I guess as you enter, more in management, probably the worst and most appealing aspect is any type of offboarding or having to let someone go in a layoff or things like that. So it's probably the worst part of it.
Yeah. As a teacher, my biggest thing is that I don't get to code as much. It's kind of one of those funny things. I get to teach people about it, but just the actual coding part, I kind of miss. Was there questions in the audience from anyone else? Alan, change your mind. There was a question from one of our, an online viewer who had asked, if somebody wanted to contact your company directly to get a job, to be interested other than go to the company website? Is there a way that they could present themselves to you? So I know some companies have like a jobs or an HR place. Patrick, you have to hand over.
So I'd say with just in general software companies, if you go and find if they have any open source repos and if they have any open issues, one way to get yourself noticed from the development team is if you solve one of the bugs in the backlog for free technically, but that'd be another way to get involved. If you wanted to find something to do, go find a project that you are using, that you're supporting, and go and look at how they write up their issues and go and take one. You'll get noticed pretty quickly because, and then make sure you have your GitHub profile with some dots, okay? So if you understand what a dot is when you go to the general page, that's contributions. So do pull requests, do code reviews of other people's work, and you'll get noticed pretty quickly.
Awesome. Other thoughts? For the companies that are here in town, obviously we have D.A. Davidson and Benefis and Raytheon. Is there something that you guys have on your site that's like a jobs or a careers option on the websites? Okay. And it's relatively easy to find. Is it one of those scroll to the bottom and find the word that says jobs?
Yeah, you know, Raytheon Technologies has, I mean, just tons of positions available. You know, pick your poison, so to speak. Whatever you want to do, if it's IT, if it's cyber, if it's, you know, contracting or civil service. I mean, they can springboard you into wherever you want to go. So, but specifically our company, yeah, it's a website thing, and yeah, there's a lot of available options and stuff from there. So just peruse and kind of find out what you like and see if you meet those requirements.
Yeah, I'd say start with the websites. LinkedIn is also great. I've had one of my recent hires, he applied for a position not in mine. He was in LinkedIn, found his profile, viewed some of the work and things he had posted, hired him as an intern, and ultimately brought him in as an analyst. So there's various ways to get into organizations, even just going up and asking if you can speak to them. Might be a little different at Raytheon. But you can just come in and ask local companies, is there any IT work, is there help, I want to do this, and just speak to people. I've also had just various managers at our company, you know, my son, my daughter is interested in cybersecurity, can they speak to you? Get a feel for what the field is like, see what you guys are doing and that sort of thing. And I know there's a lot of companies, like Davidson, for instance, we partner with a lot of job fairs to try to bring people in through those avenues, but the door's always halfway open, I'd say, if someone's willing to push it in a bit and ask questions.
Thank you. Did any of you have any closing thoughts that you wanted to mention to our audience? I think we've covered a lot of things in the last hour and 10 minutes. Sorry, I'm a little longer than I thought I'd be. Any last questions from the audience for our panelists? Wonderful. Well, I appreciate all of you, definitely all of you being here. Here at Great Falls College, we are just starting in on our B block of our fall semester, which means if you are interested in starting classes here, we have an admissions expert in the back that could help you discuss different options that we have. You're always welcome to contact me, Cheryl Simpson at Great Falls College, or gfcmsu.edu is my email address, and you're welcome to ask me any questions directly. My hope is that I think this worked out really nicely, kind of the way I expected, which is wonderful. I'd like to do this at least once a year, to be able to give this opportunity to our students to see what real people say about industries in IT. So I thank you guys so much for being here, and have a wonderful evening. Our panelists are going to stick around, I think, for a few extra minutes. If you have direct questions, you want to ask them in a little less formal, recorded environment. There's some refreshments in the back, and have a great evening. Thank you guys so much. All right. Yes, you're allowed to clap. There is coffee back there. There's coffee and cookies and water, but there's coffee and cookies. And lots of, well, I asked Patrick, should I take them both? And he's like, we can take it home if we need to.